Too many people see matchmaking as a magic pill, right? We see it like a magic pill for sales success or for the government. We see it as a way to demonstrate industry engagement. But that's all we're doing, right? Matchmaking events are, in my opinion, being used as a crutch. Or another favorite way I like talking about it is matchmaking events are being used as constructive procrastination for both government and industry. When we look at it, constructive procrastination, the whole idea behind of it is, yes, it's constructive, but you're procrastinating from doing what you really should be doing. What I want to know from each of you, government or industry, is when you're going into a matchmaking event, do you set goals? What are your goals for those matchmaking events? Do you write down a particular goal? I'm going in, this is what I want to get. For government, for example, a goal would be beyond numbers. An attendee list doesn't tell you anything, right? Doesn't provide any value to your agency. Your agency is looking for industry partners who can help with the mission downrange, whatever that is, whether you're in the Department of Army or in Homeland Security, et cetera. You have a mission that you're trying to accomplish, and that's the only reason you're talking to industry. You're not talking to industry for the good of your health or our health. We're trying to match providers, vendors who can address the requirements that you have. And so do you write goals down like that? And for industry, it's a similar thing, right? Do we write down goals? This is what I'm looking for when I go in. I'm looking to get an introduction, for example, to a follow-on. So in this training, I'm going to highlight some of the things that I just think are problems with matchmaking, why I say matchmaking is bad, right? And then I'm going to provide at the end suggestions for how we can improve the experience for both government and industry as we go forward. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. Process goes A to Z. And when you follow that process, you're going to have repeatable, predictable results. That's what I want for you generally. And that's what I want for you specifically in matchmaking for government and industry, to get out of matchmaking events that which would be the most valuable, the value to you. And so before we get started, do me a favor, help buyers remember who you are. If you haven't done so already, put your company name into the chat and put your core competencies in there. 2 or 3 words that just tell us what you sell, products, services, et cetera. Just let us know what you do and help us remember, both the buyers and those of us in this community with you. We want to be able to remember who you are and your company. If you're open to LinkedIn connections, definitely put that in. Let other people know that you're open to connections. The chat now or later is really helpful, whether you're doing comments, if you're watching the replay or you're doing the live. Let people know that you're open to connections, and they can connect afterwards saying, hey, saw you on Neil's event. Are you, if you're open to connections, let's connect with you. Finally, I wanted to say thank you to the GovCon Chamber of Commerce sustaining members. We're not funded by the government or large businesses. We're self-funded. Sustaining members like you and me make this training available to all small businesses across the nation. And on their behalf, I just want to say thanks. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling. I tend to move at a fire hose pace if this is your first time. You can always watch it on half speed later. So first thing I want to talk about as we move forward as it relates to matchmaking is, why do I say matchmaking events are a waste of time, or matchmaking events are bad for industry and government? Well, first, it's because I have a ton of experience in matchmaking events. And so this is not just observational comments that I'm making or the training I'm providing. I've got experience from hundreds of matchmaking events I've attended over the last 20 years, and they really have not evolved. The only thing that has drastically evolved is, in the old days, we used to have to walk up to a table and it was a free-for-all on filling out your name on the different pieces of paper on which table you wanted to meet with. But other than that, the vendor outreach sessions, the matchmaking sessions are kind of, how they were when my grandma used to cut off the ends of the pot roast. And so I want to talk about why I think it's a waste of time. First, for government, a couple of reasons on that, and then why I think it's a waste of time for industry. So in no particular order, right, one of the first problems I have with matchmaking for the government is that it's really just done for metrics, not for goals. And this goes back to what I said, right? We might sit there and say, oh, we had this many attendees. I watch it and I see the government often share posts on social media or whatever, really proud of, we had 200 or 400 or 2,000 people at our event. Who cares? Like, what did that do for the agency? What value did it bring to the agency? And that's why I say agencies should write down a goal they're trying to achieve. It's if all you wanted to do is reach thousands of people, you could do that without even having an event, right? You have the ability to contact industry, and we would welcome your outreach different from a matchmaking session. Another reason I think it's bad for government is a large portion of the small businesses that are coming in were not procurement ready, right? Procurement ready means that a business comes in that can support the agency mission. Fundamentally, that means giving them a prime contract. There's all this extra stuff that we end up talking about, but that's constructive procrastination from finding vendors who can come in and win prime contracts. This is for the agencies, right? Come in and win a prime contract and support the agency. Subcontracting is up to the primes. That's up to them to do. And so a large portion of the attendees who come, many of them are not even registered in SAM. They're just exploring, getting into government contracting. Many of them are in SAM, but their profiles are really poor and they're invisible, or they have no experience, so no proven experience, high risk to the government in the business that they sell or in the federal government at all, like even as a subcontractor, right? These are non-procurement ready type folks. And while everybody out there basically is good and we're willing to help other people, it's a waste of government's time to talk to those businesses. We have PTACs, Apex Accelerators. We have PTACs. We have the women-owned business centers or women business centers, the veteran business centers, the small business development centers. We have SCORE. We have all these, what I call the 7 mentors. That's who should be talking to procurement-ready businesses. And so these events are bad the way they're being done right now for government, because too many people who should be talking to SBDCs and the PTACs are coming in and talking directly to agency representatives. And when the agency is talking to all those people, they're not talking to, many more procurement ready firms. Hopefully that made sense. Another reason, by the way, I don't see chat when we're going along, so I will come back, I'll look at it, I'll engage in it, but I'm just going full bore on the training to kind of keep pace on the time. Another reason that I think it's a waste for the government is that there's a lot of time and money output when government agencies are going to somebody else's event and you're traveling to the event compared to hosting it in your office downtown DC or something. So when you're going to these, you're investing time and money to sit behind a table and potentially meet the wrong people, right? So there's a lot of investment there. The last thing that I think is a reason why I say matchmaking events are a waste of time, or they're not really good for government in this particular case, is because agencies keep doing this one thing, which I think is a huge mistake, is organizing events or theming them around small business tags, right? The small business programs. And so they'll do, hey, this is a vendor outreach session or a matchmaking session for women-owned small businesses or HubZone small businesses. First off, you're treating us like we're different, and we're not. HubZone firms are owned by women. So HubZone firms could be women-owned firms. HubZone firms could be 8A, they could be SDVO, right? We are all small business. We are all just vendors to the government. And when you organize events around the tags, then you're stressing the fact that the tags are important, which goes to a problem I'll talk in a minute about leading with our tags, right? You don't want us to lead with our tags, but when you do events that are themed like that, it kind of gives us mixed messages, right? So let me switch to industries and why I think, why I say matchmaking events are bad or a waste of time for industry. And really, we're talking about time and money, right? It's a waste of time and money out there. So the first one is sometimes we're having to pay entry fees to get into these events, $100 here, $100 there. It really begins to add up for an event that basically is just a phone call, right? I'm sitting at a table having a meeting that I could have had on the phone, right? And so this paying entry fees sometimes is horrible. And there's organizations out there that meet with the government and then charge, right? It drives me nuts. It's why I do all this free stuff. The cost of travel and lodging, government really needs to understand how the impact is on small businesses. And small businesses, you need to track this as well, that there's travel and lodging, right? If I want to go to a matchmaking event, then I have to travel. There's a Navy event coming up that I was talking with the person organizing it. And this time they're requiring it to be in person, no virtual. And the reason they said is because they want, they're going to gauge the interest of people by the ones that are coming. I'm like, well, then you're not going to get a lot of us who are good who don't go, and you'll get a lot of us who aren't procurement ready who head in there, right? So that requiring in-person thing, though, now is costing the small business, the industries, money, and a lot of money, right? It's starting to go up. I had a member of the chamber who told me how he and his brother used to come across. They both ran the business, and they would come from Chicago to DC. So they drive in, come in for an overnight so they could attend one of the events and then go back. And what they got out of it was not anywhere worth the cost of traveling in and lodging to stay. And the last one is for industry, the cost of time. There's this whole idea of opportunity cost that if I attend this event, then I'm not doing this other thing. Well, what is that? And so for government, I was saying, if you talk to a non-procurement ready, a company that should be talking to P-Tax, or a company that should be talking to a $5 million small business and getting on as a subcontractor, if you're talking to them, then you're not finding the company that has three $10 million past performances, is a woman-owned small business and could support your agency, because you can only talk to one or the other as you go forward. And it's the same thing for small businesses. When we sit there and think about going to an event, then there's this opportunity cost. And so when you think about time, I live in DC, or I'm a little bit outside of DC, but when I lived in the Beltway in the DC area, it could be a 4-hour commitment just getting out there and going to an event, easily a 4-hour commitment. And with heavy traffic, you can get on the Beltway and you're an hour and a half commute each way. Plus you got to park in DC, or you got to do things. And so there's all this requirement, the travel, getting through security, et cetera, that we're having to invest our time in to go to an event. Another reason for industry why you need to consider this when you go to these events. I don't mind spending money like you're spending $2,000 to go to a conference if you have a goal. What I'm talking about is just going to matchmaking events because they're there. So there is that huge opportunity cost that if you're at an event and you're spending a half a day or a whole day down there, then you're not doing other things you need to be doing. And one last tip is, like, when you're sitting at an event, there's a lot of wait time. If you're waiting for the tables to go, it's a really inconvenient use of our time in there. So it's wasting our time. So that's why I think it's a waste of time. Now let me talk about, before I talk about what we can do to make it right, let's talk about once there at a table, both government or industry, there's the problem of bad matches, right? And if you've been in this industry long enough, and you've been doing this work or going to matchmaking events, you've sat down at a table where the other person was just not a good fit, what I call a bad match, right? It didn't matter whether you were government looking at industry or industry looking at government. And so let me give you an example with government, a couple examples here. So first example, and it's one of my pet peeves, is if I'm the government and somebody is sitting across the table from me, I can see they have not done their homework. They don't know anything about my agency, what we do, what we buy, our mission, what's our purpose, what are some of the things we're looking for, et cetera. One of my favorite agencies out their offices is Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane. They did this great briefing to industry. And not only did they tell you what each office, like major subordinate office in their command, was doing, but they also said, here's what we need from industry. Well, that kind of information at various levels, maybe not that great, is out there. And when somebody is coming in and not doing their homework, that makes for a bad match, because it's just 15 minutes of telling them, we're the Navy, we sail and fight on the water or whatever we do, right? Another reason for the government that could be a sign of a bad match, right, is the person comes with unrealistic expectations. This goes back to theming an event on women-owned or hub-zone or STVO type events, but they come with unrealistic expectations. I'm here, I'm sitting across from you, give me a contract, right? It's a STVO themed event. I'm here, I'm an STVO. Where are the contracts? Right? So where's the money? It's completely unrealistic expectations of somebody sitting down. It is at best an introduction, right? But it's a bad match when that person is coming in and they're asking for something. Their expectations are just completely unrealistic. And the third thing, last one for the government on a sign that it's a bad match, is that the person's company is not a match to the requirements or the needs the agency has, right? And so this is a really big deal, is, if you're the government and you're trying to find people in industry and you haven't set a goal, then you're going to get all of us coming to you. We're like, oh, there's somebody from, NAVC or the Navy or something. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to sit down. Well, who were you looking for? And I see sometimes people try to do matching by NAICS codes or something, which doesn't make any sense to me at all, since NAICS codes cover a broad breadth of things that could be sold, products and services. But it's not a good match when you sit down with a company that cannot serve your requirements or your needs. For example, construction, sitting down with NAVC type command. Well, they don't really buy construction services. Go to NAVFAC. They buy a lot of it, right? And so those are kind of examples of bad matches from the government side to industry. And now for industry back, this is much more personal because I've been there and I've been on this side of the table over and over. But one of my first signs that it's a bad match is you got somebody who's just unhelpful, right? They can't help. You wish they could help, but they can't help. So they're unhelpful, or worse. And this is the worst thing I have ever experienced on the other side, is they just spew how to do business with us, website information. Literally, you get government people who will say to somebody on the other side of the table in industry saying, well, you need to register in SAM, do this. It's like, what are you talking about? We've got, $10-20 million a year in business with your agency. Could we really get to some serious talks? But they don't care, right? So they spew information. And what it really is, the reason that happens, by the way, is because that person has not been trained on how to be a matchmaker on the other side. They're a person who was shoved into that job and said, hey, get capability statements, tell them how to do business with us, go to the end of the day, give yourself a pat on the back, right? That's the person who would be unhelpful, is the one who hasn't been trained by the agency. Another example of a bad match for industry is when the government rep or large primes do this a lot as well. They're dismissive or arrogant, right? This is, one of the most common things you see from largest, but even agencies do this sometimes, is this arrogance that drips off, completely oblivious to what it really means to be a small business. My favorite are when people leave large companies or agencies and think they're going to become a small business success, and then they finally realize what we've been doing on the other side of the table, right? I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying they're uninformed. They're unaware. They need to be understanding what it's like to actually be a small business. Many small businesses were treated like an intern, but often it's the business owner sitting on the other side of the table. That business owner is often a subject matter expert out there, right? So when you've got those kind of people and then you have a dismissive person on the other side, that makes for a bad match. And the last thing, biggest problem is the government, and this is not a bad thing, but it's just an organizational thing at a matchmaking event. The biggest problem we have as industry is when the government has the wrong people on the other side of the table, right? It's rarely the right person, and they don't really know anything that can help. Sometimes they're super nice and super willing to help. They're just not able to because they're construction, or they're a contract specialist related to construction, or a small business specialist who doesn't really actually know a lot about stuff that's inside. And you're selling IT, or maybe you're selling construction, and the person on the other side is very aware of the IT and professional services needs, but not tracking too much on construction. Maybe they're not actually very engaged within their organization. 2 weeks ago, I did a training or a live session with Matt Burkett out of the Navy, Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane. And one of the things I really love about how he does his job and runs his side of the house in that command is that he engages heavily with his internal customers, begins to have an understanding of what they're doing from the innovation side to the normal O&M type purchases. He understands the large primes that are serving that command. And so he's able to talk with you. And that's what we look for when we're sitting down with somebody on the other side of the table. But often it's the wrong person. And so just like industry might not be able to help the government because we don't have the right skills to help with the requirement, on this side, the government person can't help us navigate their agency because they really don't know how to do it themselves. When you attend an event on either side of the table, right, whether you're on the government side or on the industry side, and you experience some of what I've shared, then you begin to have a lack of confidence in the worth of the matchmaking events. And that's why I'm doing this training, right? The matchmaking events are never going to go away. So what I hope is to provide some guidance, some tips, some feedback, if you will, on how it can be better for industry and how it can be better for government. And so let me provide a couple of tips on what could be done, what should be done to make matchmaking good for industry and government instead of being bad the way I teased it out there, right, for this training today. So I want to give a couple of reasons. I got 4 for government and 4 suggestions for government and 3 for industry on how to make it better, what we could do to make it better. So the first thing for government, and this is not an exhaustive list. This is a suggestive list, a teaser, if you will. There's so much that government could do. A lot of what I recommend industry does I put it out there every single day. I've done like 300 trainings in the last 12 months for industry. I haven't done as much for government. And so what I'm about to say for government is just the tip of the iceberg of what you could do. And you can reach out to me if you want me to give you the rest of the tips. But first thing is create a vetting process for industry that we must pass to prove we're procurement ready. It's not a bad thing for you to say, you know what, you're not procurement ready. I can't talk to you right now. I get people who haven't even got into government contracting who reach out to me and want to talk to me. I'm like, look, I would love to talk with you. I love to help people. But if I'm talking to you, I can't talk to the people who are farther along. I created all this training so that you could watch this training, and I had the how-tos in there so that you can learn how to be a good government contractor and get your first $1 million or something. That's all free out there. So how about you do that first, then let's get on a call. I'm not trying to be aloof or something. I just don't have unlimited time, and neither does the government. The government can't talk to every small business that wants to talk with them. You should only be talking to those that are procurement ready, right? And you should be working very closely with your PTACs, et cetera, so that they're very informed and can help those ones that are not procurement ready begin to become procurement ready. So the first suggestion is create that vetting process, and it's not that hard. Second one is create an FY24, 2024 doing business with us course. Almost everybody has some butcherized page that still says FBO on it on their websites, right? You might be the one agency out there that's a little farther advanced, but it's still that same kind of thing. It's the old school 1990s way of telling businesses how to do business with your agency. Create a course instead, and not just create it where it has these small modules you can sit there and teach them, and I'll give you some suggestions, but then track the progress. I do this as well. I sit there and say, hey, here's a training on how to do business. It's free. Take that, and if I see you take the whole course and take the lessons, then I'm happy to talk with you. But if you're not going to invest the time to learn about how to do business in the government contracting, I'm not going to spend the time with you. And the government needs to be a little bit more direct like that as well. If you're not going to take the time to learn how to do business with us in this course so that we can monitor your progress, then we're not going to give you a call. I don't want to get on the phone with you and go, well, our top NAICS codes are these, or this is that, right? You want us industry to learn all that on our own so that when we come to you, the conversation level is much higher. Some examples of what could be in the course, which are really important, the procurement process. I showed USDA's roadmap. It's this beautiful 3 or 4 layer roadmap that lays out all the steps. And so people can see where requirements are as they go through the acquisition process. That's fantastic, because then we align our sales process that industry has onto that, and we begin to track that in our pipeline. We begin to understand, how do you come up with an idea and then shape it into an RFP, right? And so share that procurement process visually and in the training. Share information about the top vehicles. I can go into FBDS and see the top NAICS codes and things like that really easy, but it's not as easy to find what are the top 10 contract vehicles we use. Right? We almost always go here, or you could align it to the common goods, which is my next one, is in category management, there's 10 common goods, more 19 for DOD, but these 10 common goods give a training on, hey, in Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane, this is what we buy. In the common goods, here's medical, we don't buy any on there. Or, you can put dollar values in there, but you're teaching us what you buy. Have an organizational breakdown, so the org chart of your command, your office, and then also have, what do those offices do, the purpose, and what they need from industry. All of that can be in that training course. Another suggestion for government to make matchmaking better, and I'm going to pick up speed here, is host matchmaking events around the common goods. For example, a cybersecurity event or a professional services one, maybe an IT services one, separate from a construction one or a medical one, right? Help people understand that I don't need to go to that matchmaking event. It's all medical, for example, or it's all cyber and I don't do cyber, I do construction. Host that around the common good categories, and it'll help people be able to come in. It'll lead to helpful matches for the government. You're meeting with businesses that are in that space. And it also enables better networking among all of us in the industry who are attending that event. We're seeing other businesses who are in our same space. The last tip for the government is make sure at the table, have representatives from the program office. Get those people in talking, right? If you vet industry the right way, you won't waste the program office's time, because they'll meet subject matter experts that can begin to advise them on just future requirements. For industry, I just did 4 days of training, right? How to prepare, how to network, how to rock your table sitting of 10 to 15 minutes, and how to follow up after matchmaking events. The first thing is go watch that and follow what I say in there. It's 2 hours of training. People would pay for this kind of training. It's free out there. And the other thing is, separate from matchmaking, consider doing the 7-step process. Research the agency you're trying to get into, determine the people you want to talk to, find their names, numbers, and then reach out to them. That fundamentally is what you would do at a matchmaking event anyways, right? Except for at a matchmaking event, it tends to be a lot more blind. But if you follow the 7-step process that I teach all of the time, and somebody will put that into the chat, you'll be able to drive towards the people you want without ever going to the matchmaking event. Matchmaking events should be like selling your company. A lot of small business owners don't understand this. When you sell your company, it should not be your retirement money so that you can put it in savings or retire. When you sell your company, that should be a bonus so you can do whatever you want. But while you have your company, you should be pulling money out for your retirement, 401k, whatever, right? Then you sell your company, have your bonus, do whatever you want. It's the same thing with matchmaking. Follow the 7-step process to build the relationships you want. Go to matchmaking for bonus networking with the agency and industry out there. Okay, I know I'm blowing through here really fast. I want to end on time. Keep in mind, matchmaking events, they could be very helpful with some basic changes, right? I laid them out. I mentioned multiple recommendations for government and industry. But if I leave you each with just one tip, same tip for government and industry, it's this: set actual goals that are going to be helpful beyond numbers, right? What are you going to get out of that? For industry, you might say, I want to meet, or for government, you might say, I want to meet 3 SharePoint small businesses, SharePoint companies, because I know that's a need we have, right? Have a specific goal like that of who you're trying to meet. For industry, I want to get an agreement to have a follow-up meeting. If you set a goal and write it down, you're going to hit it, and you'll have much more success in the matchmaking events. If you find value in my trainings, become a sustaining member today. If you're already doing business in the government and you're already making money, $1 million, $2 million, and you want to go to the next level, reach out to me about our BD Accelerator workshop. It's a 90-day workshop. Happy to talk with you on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a message. And remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. Matchmaking, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.